Hey, since you made it to this video, you might as well stick around because today I'm going to prove everybody wrong that's been saying bad things about the G70A and the PlayStation 5. That's not all we're going to cover. We're definitely also going to cover the Xbox Series S and X and how well it functions on this G70A. So let's dive in. We're going to be testing both side by side right here on my desk, and then we're going to interpret those results, and I'll give you my conclusion at the end of the video. So currently, as it sits with HDMI 2.1 4K monitors that I've reviewed, the G70A is pretty much top of my list. There's no other monitor out there that all around really beats this out that I've tested. Now, if you have suggestions, please put it below in the comment section. I'm more than happy to check those out and review them on the channel if I get enough requests. That being said, let's get in and talk about this monitor and get into the benchmarking. So first and foremost, of course, this is the G70A. It's a 4K, 144 Hz, 1 millisecond response rate HDR 400 monitor. I love the aesthetics of this monitor. It's sweet. It has this awesome new age modern look on the back. It's very sleek. It even includes RGB on the back and bottom that you can custom program. The stand is fully adjustable with height adjustment, pan, tilting, and rotation, which is a lot to ask for at this price point. To cap it all off, they have a great menu, and of course this is a G-Sync certified monitor from NVIDIA. And for the purpose of this video, it is also a FreeSync premium monitor to boot. So we're going to start by going through the menus and setup of both the PS5 and the Xbox Series S. And I want to check out the calibration capability, what different video formats are allowed, and all of the above for both consoles. So here with the PlayStation, it automatically senses that this is an HDR monitor and actually has me go through that HDR calibration. So we're able to get full 30, 60, and 120 Hz with HDR and non-HDR at 4K resolutions, which is super important. I will also mention that it is backwards compatible to that 1080p 120 Hz HDR, and then of course 60 Hz HDR, just in case there's some games that don't play in 4K that you're interested in. You know, and this is where it all really comes together with the Xbox Series S. If we go into the menu here under video and fidelity and video modes, we can see we have full variable refresh rate, YCC 4.2.2, 4K capabilities, HDR10, and auto HDR. That means this bad boy gives you full 1080p, 1440p, and 4K resolutions at 120 Hz with variable refresh rate, and then 1080p and 4K also add on that HDR functionality. Now I know the asterisk here is that the Series S is 1440p gameplay upscaled, but on the Series X, you're absolutely going to get those resolutions native. So jumping into the PlayStation 5 here, we have Rocket League, and I will admit, this map is a bit dark, but the black level performance seems okay. It's crushing a little black areas right here as far as detail goes, but if you look up into the outer space, it actually looks really, really good, and the neon colors pop extremely well. And at a full 120 Hz, the motion handling is extremely well. The responsiveness of the controller on this PlayStation 5 is super nice on this particular monitor. And I will note that it does have a low input lag functionality on the actual menus of the monitor. You know, and I have played this on 1440p and 1080p monitors, and the game looks a lot more flat than on 4K. And that's not necessarily Samsung, that could be pretty much any good 4K monitor, but the fact that we're not seeing any oversaturation, we're getting good kind of 3D rendering here, it's actually turning out to be a good quality monitor for all around gameplay, especially games like this. Alright, so based on a recommendation from one of you viewers, I actually decided to play a bit of Halo Infinite. I mean, it's an Xbox exclusive, of course I should be playing it. And I have to say that it is very well optimized for Xbox, and this monitor really shines with this Halo game. Now, it's not as fast paced as I'm used to when it comes to FPS. It's a lot more like Valorant. And there's a teeny bit of motion blur, there's no screen tearing, it's not like this juddery mess where I'm skipping across the screen. It's actually pretty dang smooth, and as I'm playing, I don't notice any of this. Maybe I do a tiny bit on the world motion blur just because I'm used to PC, But if you're used to console gaming, this is extremely smooth. And the little bit of double image that I'm getting here on Halo Infinite really isn't an issue. Okay, so those were two pretty slow-paced games, easy to use, well optimized for console. Let's jump into something that's not so well optimized for console, and I'm sure you guys know by now that's going to be Warzone. So starting up with this PlayStation 5 here, of course what I do is I go in and I try to mess with that color, contrast, and brightness, and I really kind of dial in that black level detail, and I pull out some of those colors because they seem really dull on console. And that's a theme. It's not just the PlayStation or this monitor. It's the console and how it reacts with a good monitor. But after doing so, I'm able to get some of those purples out. I actually take down some of the red as usual and hype up some of the other colors without being too oversaturated. And in fact, I found that Gamma 2 is pretty good for Warzone, even though I didn't use it in this particular video. But as we parachute in here, I mean, I'm always shocked when I see a good 4K monitor with a console. I mean, the graphics it delivers with something like the PlayStation 5 on this particular game, I mean, the water scene is awesome. Every single time you guys hear me talk about it, and the fact that it's doing some complex rendering here, we've got some reflections, just a very clean, very quality look. It shocks me every time that a PlayStation 5 can do this. And again, looking up, it's not blowing out the detail in those bright areas. I can still make out my scope. I can see the clouds around me, and the detail's not just blown out. Let's talk a bit more about the lighting panel, the fact that it's a full array, and the color quality we get out of this PlayStation 5. I'm looking a little bit far away, maybe 150 yards at these opponents through my binoculars because I'm about to do an airstrike on them. We can see we're just making out beautiful, beautiful clarity. I mean, against the backdrop, you can really see the characters there. You can make out all the details, who they're aiming at. This is massively important if you're looking for good gameplay. I guarantee you on a 1080p monitor, you show the same exact clip, it's going to look a bit hazy. You're not going to get quite the same amount of detail. Maybe something that doesn't have full array dimming like the G70A does. I mean, there's other 4K monitors that do, but you're not going to get this type of contrast and clarity out of other monitors. Well, I have to admit I don't play a lot of PlayStation 5 on Warzone, but I'm doing my best here. The joysticks are a little too close, but you can see this guy kind of catches me off guard here, and I'm swinging back and forth trying to find my way out this window. I just can't figure it out. So finally I make it out, I pop back in, and I pause as I'm moving pretty quickly here, aim down sights, looking right at this guy. I've got him dead to rights, but he's got the jump on me. I've got pretty much 10% life left. There's no way I'm making it through this, but image quality is perfect. I mean, it is fantastic after all that running, moving around. I pause and the clarity is perfect. There's no tearing, there's no double image, ghosting, anything like that happening. This was the only semi-bad thing that I found, and I think it's the angle of the game, not necessarily the monitor, but pretty far off into the distance. I can see this guy moving, but I can't make out any detail on him whatsoever. And you can kind of see that as I pause here, I break his armor. It's still very hazy, you know, so even really far away with a lot of light coming in, this panel can be a bit of a challenge if these circumstances ever came up. So of course we're going to be jumping into the Xbox Series S gameplay on Warzone, but before we do, I want to let you guys know two things. We have a fantastic channel built out for you, so go check out that homepage. There's tons of playlists, tons of videos. I'm sure you can find something that you're looking for right now or interested in, and go check it out. And definitely hit the like button, subscribe if you made it this far in the video, because we got a lot more to show you and many more videos to come. Now the second thing, we have just opened up channel memberships for you guys. So if you want to support the channel and you come back often for videos, go look for that join button. It's either under the video or on the home page. It's an extremely low cost and it helps us create more content for you guys, and better content for that matter. So I appreciate you guys if you've considered that or even clicked on the button, and hopefully we get more of you to join. There's a good community behind that wall, and I want to keep it growing. So let's jump in, you guys. We got the Series S and a bit of Warzone here. Now this isn't the rendering hog that the PlayStation 5 is. You can see it just jumping into the map. We're not getting the rendering far away that we did on the PlayStation. The water's not looking as good. It's not as vibrant, and it doesn't really say much about this monitor. It's more about what you're using to drive it. I will say this though, the motion handling on this so far and the input lag or lack thereof is actually pretty nice.
Nice.
And I have to mention to you, even if you have just the Series S, you're getting a couple of things here that you're not with the PlayStation 5. Most notably, the variable refresh rate capability. And that's kind of how the rest of the gameplay went on Warzone with the Series S. Fantastic motion handling. It kind of fell short in some areas when it came to color contrast and black level performance. But again, I think that's a Series S issue because we didn't see that on the PlayStation 5. Alright, so next up we're going to get into a bit of Fortnite on both of these consoles, but I do want to make a little note before we get started, and it's the fact that I did leave HDR off on this particular test between both consoles. You know, and as we're diving in here, it's bright, we have a bit of a sunset, so it's giving us this pink hue within the map, but I noticed that it's a little oversaturated in those like red, magenta colors. Otherwise, it's actually looking very good. And this is kind of the perfect game for anyone who wants to play and have a good experience on a console. I say that in every video, but this monitor is no exclusion to that. The color's holding up extremely well. Obviously that red pops a little bit more. Like I said, you can probably bring that down just a little bit, but I pause in the middle of this swing and the motion handling is extremely well. I'm moving pretty fast here. There's no motion blur. Now the only nitpicky part I'll pull out is the shadow detail underneath these trees here. It's a bit dark. It's crushing that detail just a little bit, but it's not so bad that I can't play. And what I notice as I'm doing this, as I'm running, is we just see all of this color and all of this building happening and me moving quickly and jumping from rooftop to rooftop with those nice magenta looking hues and green grass, and the color just pops extremely well. I mean, this monitor handles it much like some of the best monitors that I've used in the past. And don't get me wrong, this isn't a hard game to actually render for a PlayStation 5 or to put on a display like this. But when you get these two together and they like to function and work, this is the result that you get. You get an extremely smooth gameplay, really good color clarity, great contrast, and you know, again, being nitpicky, the only downside there is the fact that that shadow detail isn't as good as I want, and if I change my other settings, it might blow out the detail a bit. But I want to test this out on the Series S and see if it's a similar result. Again, those graphics for the Series X are going to line up more with the PlayStation 5, while motion and functionality line up extremely well. And obviously we can tell immediately just jumping in, it's a lot darker, but it's later in the day on the game. And I'm actually still pulling out a good amount of shadow detail. It's not extremely bad. And as it gets a little bit lighter out, we start to see that color pop again, those buildings and those shadows and the different hues of color in the sky and the lights in the distance. They actually really start to pop. There's a teeny bit of motion blur on this Series S, which I couldn't find on the PlayStation 5. So I'm going to chalk that one up to the actual graphics processing capability. But that being said, it should have variable refresh rate. So seeing a bit of that motion blur here is a bit concerning. And then up close, fast-paced action here. This guy thinks he's gonna sneak around and take us out, and no luck here. As I turn my corner around this car, I aim down sights, I'm just beaming straight on him here. He goes down within about a second. Boom, and there he is. Great motion clarity and color retention and everything like that. So up close, fast-paced interaction seems to be doing well. Far away, we're holding that contrast and retaining that color quite a bit as well. So next up, of course, is going to be related to content, streaming content, 4K, HDR, and I'm going to throw in a bit of non-HDR because I want to make an argument today. And the argument is when you're streaming content, videos, movies, TV, whatever it is, HDR doesn't always have a good impact. In fact, it can make the experience worse in some cases. So let's dive in. We're going to start with the PlayStation 5. Jumping into the Expanse here, it's a very dark TV series. It's out in space, so your black level performance is everything when it comes to this type of TV series and content that you're watching, which is why I play it. And what I do is I get into this initial intro here. It's a very dark intro, almost zero detail out of that black level performance. I mean, it is crushing every bit of shadow here that's possible. Can't even make out the face of the other characters. And this is in HDR, mind you. But I turn off HDR on the PlayStation 5. And here we are, you can see immediately you're making out more detail on her face. You can actually see a realistic color to the face. There wasn't any before, it was just very dark, almost like a shadow. And that's the other thing, is when HDR is off, it gives you a lot more color calibration. And in this type of setting, when you're watching this type of content, I would tell you absolutely keep HDR off. Go to that menu, turn it off. Don't use it when you're watching 4K content that you know is really dark. So jumping into Disney Plus here, I love to play that Star Wars intro here. Just those stars on that black space backdrop. It really challenges a monitor to look good. And what we notice is it's doing an okay job. Now, I can go into the menu with HDR on and do a teeny bit of calibration here, but there's nothing that's really gonna pull out a ton of detail when HDR is on. So we kind of have to leave it as set. And what I will say is it is actually doing a really good job with like pulling out detail in dark areas to a degree. The contrast isn't extremely high, and the full array dimming doesn't actually give us bright stars in this type of scene, but the actual detail of this planet is pretty good. It's not showing any weird artifacting or color change or blowing out the detail in any way. If I didn't tell you what this scene was and I just played this for you on the screen, you would be looking for what's going on, because the reality is that this is just way too dark. And I'll go further. I'll play another scene, but this, you should be able to see the backdrop of BB-8 here and make out a ton of detail. You should be able to see stormtroopers and action going on, but you can really only see that when there's like a laser beam flying by or an explosion in the background. So this monitor is not doing a very good job with this console and HDR content. So what I do is I turn off that HDR. Now the image itself is a bit flat here comparing this planet to the HDR planet. It does really fall flat in that area. So you remember that scene I was telling you to make out? This is it. It's a very dark scene. There's a lot going on. What we have is a backdrop of space with BB-8 here, and we're actually not really making out a lot of detail. But it's far more than what we made with HDR. And these fight scenes are so much brighter. I don't have to wait for a laser beam to come by for me to be able to see. I can actually see what's going on. So there's a lot I can really say about the PlayStation 5, the Series S, the Series X, and this G70A. I've done just about every video I can think to do on this G70A, and believe me, it's one of my very top and very favorite monitors. So we're gonna be talking about the downsides, the upsides, and I want you guys to comment if you agree or disagree, or you have anything else that you want to talk about on this video. First and foremost, I was not extremely happy when it came to these consoles, the black level performance of this monitor. And that was kind of generally speaking. It happened on the PlayStation 5 with Rocket League, as we've seen. It happened on Warzone with the Series S, and then again we saw it crop up on that PlayStation 5 when we were playing Fortnite. The second downside is the fact that it does not have or isn't compatible with the auto low latency mode. Now the third is a bit nitpicky, and it's the fact that out of the box without any color correction, it is oversaturated in the greens and the reds. All right, so before we get into the upsides, I have to address something and a major concern a lot of people had, and I'm sure I'll get a comment or two, or many more actually, on this particular topic. And it's the fact that most people don't know that within this G70A, and the menu settings down below underneath system of those menu settings, it has an input type. And that input type can change your HDMI and your DisplayPort inputs to receive a PC signal or an AV signal. Now, if you're using the PlayStation 5, you want PC signal. To me, that's an upside because a lot of people lost faith in this monitor because they said it didn't work with the PlayStation 5. That is wrong. And I'm not saying anyone was wrong. I've given bad information from time to time without knowing all of the details. It matters. It matters because this is a good monitor for PlayStation 5. And don't discredit it because you've seen people say you can only get 60 hertz 4K resolution. That's not true. All right, so number one on those upsides is the fact that this monitor is fully capable between both the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and S. I mean, it's really only missing that auto low latency mode. Otherwise, every other feature works perfectly on this monitor. Number two, to tackle that auto low latency mode, Samsung has actually put a low input lag feature in the menu of this monitor. And believe me, it makes a difference. I've not noticed any massive input lag on this monitor because I use that low input lag almost exclusively 100% of the time. And then that last upside would be the fact that there are tons of features. I mean, it has RGB on it, it's G-Sync if you do want to use it with an NVIDIA graphics card.
It has full capability of tilt, height adjustment, rotation. It's got a cool design, cable management in the back, tons of different menus and presets. I mean, it's geared for use with pretty much any system that you could want from now for the next 5 years.
So I absolutely think those features matter. So I'm gonna keep it real simple, you guys. And on the recommendation, yes, I would absolutely tell you to buy it. That being said, I don't see that it is any different from like the Acer Nitro XV282K, from the Gigabyte M28U, from the LG GP950. At least performance-wise, I didn't see this massive upshift in performance or features that I didn't get from those. So the caveat here is that if it's cheaper and it costs less and you can get it, then absolutely buy it. Otherwise, it doesn't really make a difference on console. Now, if you're a dual user, you have PlayStation 5, you have Xbox, you have a gaming PC or gaming laptop that you want to be able to plug into it, then hands down, this would be my favorite monitor that I've tested on the channel that's 4K HDMI 2.1. And it all comes down to the fact of this beautiful logo on the bottom left that says G-Sync. I use RTX the majority of the time and it works really well with that. Okay, you guys, I've talked enough. You've listened to enough of this video, but if you want to hear more, you want to see more of the console gaming monitors that I've reviewed on the channel, I'm going to put a playlist up above as we end this video. It's going to have all the console gaming monitors that I've reviewed. I've tested them on the Series S, Series X, PlayStation 5. You can go through and you can check all the recommendations. But you don't have to take my word for it because I show you the actual gameplay and break it down with you real time in the video. So hit the like button on the video. Hopefully you're subscribed and I'll see you guys on the next video.